观世事假牟尼佛，南无观世音菩萨，南无大势至菩萨，南无阿弥陀佛。阿弥陀佛，南无阿弥陀佛。Respected Dharma Masters, fellow practitioners, and guests of this YouTube channel, Amitabha, Namo Amitabha. The beginning of this series of talks will be on the threefold devotional heart, as theorized by the great Pure Land, Japanese Pure Land master Honen Shonin. And before we get into this, I want to briefly talk about our society here in Northeast Florida. Some people say, Master, is it Chinese Pure Land? Is it Japanese Pure Land? Is it Tibetan? In order to share the teachings of Pure Land Buddhism to the West, we here at the Nyingpo Nembutsu Society of Northeast Florida have incorporated predominantly both the Chinese and the Japanese. So Chinese Mahayana Pure Land practices and Japanese, specifically of the Jodo Shu school of Honin Shonin, because it is most in line with traditional Chinese Pure Land. A lot of my Western disciples have said that the Japanese, as far as the liturgy and chanting, is easier for them to pronounce than the Chinese. So what we have done is alternate between Chinese and Jodoshu Otsutome services. And Westerners seem to be more able to comprehend and chant the Japanese. But the teachings are, for the most part, identical. So, in order for Buddhism, true Pure Land Buddhism, to be what it should be, Amitabha, Amida Buddha made the vows for all sentient beings. So it doesn't matter whether you are Chinese, Japanese, Vietnamese, Korean, Caucasian, American. The Buddha made his vows for every sentient being. And what is easier for one to do and in the practice is just as acceptable. So here you will find us chanting both in the Chinese and in the Japanese. And as I said, the Western disciples have stated that the Japanese is easier for their ears and their tongues to pronounce. So it doesn't matter whether you say Namo Amitabha, Namo Amitabha, Namo Amidabus, Namo Ayidafat, Namo Amidabud. It doesn't matter. The holy name of Amitabha Buddha is the same in any language. So, moving forward, you will see me mention both the Chinese and the Japanese. So, don't get confused. Some of my Eastern people, Chinese disciples, Japanese, and so on, don't get confused when you hear different terms in a different language. It is still the holy name of Amitabha Buddha. So, why are we gathered together for this video, this new series? And we're specifically going to talk about the importance of the threefold devotional heart. And the threefold devotional heart comes to us from the Japanese master Honin Shonin and the Jodoshu, the Japanese Pure Land school. Some of you may say, well, what's the difference between Jodoshu and Jodo Shinshu? Those of you who are familiar with the Japanese Pure Land schools. Jodoshu and Jodo Shinshu are linked together because both of them come from the same original master, Honin Shonin. Shinran Shonin was a disciple of Honin Shonin, and during the period of exile in Japan, where Honin was exiled this way, and Shinan was exiled this way, and other disciples, different ideas and philosophies of practice happened. So, at the beginning, Jodoshu means Pure Land sect or Pure Land denomination, Pure Land thought. Jodo Shinshu means true Pure Land school or sect or denomination. Neither one is more correct than the other. It's just varying interpretations on Nembutsu practice or Nyanfal practice, reciting the Buddha's name and why we do that. Honin Shonin was more in line with traditional Chinese Pure Land school. Shinran Shonin interpreted the Nyanfo or the Nembutsu, the Buddha name practice, as something that we do out of gratitude because of salvation already assured. So Shinran Shonin is very similar to Christian Protestant religions in that because of our belief in Amida Buddha's vows, our salvation has already in the Pure Land has already been assured. So when we recite the Buddha name, it is a simple act of gratitude. Well, Honin Shonin was more in line with traditional Chinese Pure Land Buddhism. So, yes, one recitation of the Buddha name is sufficient for our birth in the Pure Land. However, we still dedicate many chantings of Nembutsu or the Buddha name, Nyanfo, for that birth in the Pure Land, so that Buddha Amitabha, Amida Buddha, and the holy host of the Pure Land will welcome us at death and take us to the Pure Land. Ultimately, very similar teachings between the Jodoshu and Jodo Shinshu. But the thing you have to remember about Japan, especially at that time period in which Honin Shonin found himself, unlike China, where people were a lot more accepting of different traditions and incorporating different practices into the one tradition, Japan was at the time very either or. And Honin Shonin saw in the Tendai schools, the Shingon schools, the Hosso, Ritsu, and all of these varying forms of Buddhism, that they were geared more towards a specific type of person. People that were followers of Zen were individuals that were either rich or could afford to spend all of these long periods of time in seated meditation. The Shingon esoteric schools, if you could devote yourself to these mantras and these dhairanis and all of these mystical forms of practice, then you would be able to achieve enlightenment in this life. Honin Shonin saw that the average person, if you are a butcher or a farmer, well, as a butcher, you've already broken the precepts as far as no killing and meat eating and so on and so forth. Honin Shonin basically came up with the capsulized version of the Nembutsu or the Nyanfo, the chanting of the Buddha name, and basically said that to keep the precepts is a wonderful thing, and it is a laudable goal, and we should all do this. But there are more of us that break the precepts than keep them. There are more of us that break these vows and these laws and Vinaya and the disciplines and this, that, and the other than there are those that can keep then don't break them. And Honin Shonin saw that Amida Buddha made his vows, and especially the original vow, the 18th, for all of humanity and the salvation of all of humanity simply by reciting Amitofo, Namo Amitofo, Namo Amida Butsu, and so forth, simply by reciting the Buddha name. And though we may break the precepts and we may eat meat and we may engage in illicit sexual relations, and all of these bad things that we should not do, Honen Shonin realized that the vow of Buddha Amitabha is truly all encompassing. Otherwise, he would have never achieved enlightenment. When Dharmakara Bodhisattva Hozo Bosatsu made those 48 vows, and especially the 18th, that all sentient beings, regardless of, and to put it in modern language, all sentient beings, whether they are male, female, straight, gay, whether they keep the precepts, whether they violate the precepts, whether they are vegetarians, whether they're meat eaters, whether they consume alcohol, whether they don't, whether they abstain from alcohol, all of these beings, regardless of any of their evil karmas, I will save them all. And they will all be welcome into my Pure Land after death, simply by holding faith in the vows that I make, making vows themselves to be reborn into my Pure Land, and then practicing reciting my holy name, the Buddha name, the Nyempho, Nembutsu. And so, what brings us into the beginning of this series of talks is the threefold devotional heart. And what is that? In order to be reborn into the Pure Land, we have to have these three hearts. The threefold devotional hearts. And what are they? Well, first of all, before we begin this topic, let us dedicate 10 times Nembutsu, or 10 times the chanting of the Buddha name in Japanese, for our minds to be open, our hearts to be open, and for us to embrace the teaching. So we dedicate 10 times Nembutsu to the purpose of our minds being open to hear this teaching. Namu Amidabu, Namu Amidabu, Namu Amidabu, Namu Amidabu. Namu Amidabu, Namu Amidabu, Namu Amidabu, Namu Amidabu. Nam Amida Butsu, Nam Amida Bu. So, as we enter into the thought of Honen Shonin, our master Honen Shonin, let us be open to hearing what the teachings are, and our prayer to be reborn into the Pure Land after this life, so that we can learn from Buddha Amitabha and become Buddhas ourselves, and then save fellow sentient beings. So, what is the threefold devotional heart? The first of the threefold devotional hearts, or the threefold devotional heart, is a genuine heart. Master, what does that mean? The genuine heart is simply someone who, in breaking all of this down for those that may not be scholars and those that may not understand big words and lofty words, but breaking it down for everyday people. The threefold devotional heart. In this video, we will talk about the first one, and that is the genuine heart. What is that? What does genuine heart mean? The genuine heart is the heart that realizes that in all of the historical, in Shakyamuni Buddha's teachings, and he taught a lot, Buddha Shakyamuni said that there were 84,000 paths to the truth, and he taught at varying levels according to the capacity of the individuals that he was teaching, and the way that they would understand. So we have all of these different sects of Buddhism, all of these different denominations, and they are no less valid than the other. However, in all Buddhist sutras, there is a very special sutra. 3 actually in the Pure Land Sutras, but there's a very special sutra that was taught by the Buddha without being asked a question. Typically, much like in the Christian religion, Jesus taught in parables because his disciples asked him a question, or they weren't clear what he said, so they proposed a question, and then he elaborated and taught in these parables. But in all of Buddhism, there is an interesting, the Abhitoching, the smaller Amitabha Sutra, or in the Japanese, the Amida Kyo, the smaller Amitabha Sutra, where he teaches on his own. There are no disciple that asked him a question. But the radiance, the golden light of the Buddha shined upon Shakyamuni, and he taught this teaching of his own. And why is that important? Well, as you know, there are many, 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 many different sutras. Brahmanet Sutra, Lotus Sutra, Amitabha Sutra, and so on and so on and so on. But with the Pure Land Sutras, Buddha Amitabha taught these of his own without being asked a question. So, when we realize that the central purpose of Buddha Shakyamuni, the historical Buddha, Siddhartha, Gautama, whatever you want to call him, but Shakyamuni Buddha, the historical Buddha, what was his purpose in being born and becoming the Buddha in this life? It was, yes, to teach us liberation and to teach us a way out of this delusional samsara world of constant suffering, and we are born and born and born and born again. Shakyamuni Buddha's purpose, and he says it, Shakyamuni Buddha's purpose in this life was to teach the Pure Land Sutras, to teach us of Amitabha Buddha, Amida, Amitabha, and to teach us of the Pure Land, Jingtu Zhuodu. He knew that in the various periods of the Dharma, in the beginning preaching of the Dharma, it was very easy for everyday people like you and I to practice austerities and meditation and forsake our worldly pleasures and this, that, and the other. And we would be able to attain Buddhahood in this life. Buddha Shakyamuni also knew that in the future there would be where we are now, in the Dharma ending period, the era of Mappo, the Dharma ending period, the latter day of the law. And all of these previous practices that the Buddha taught we are unable to practice these because we are so far removed from the Buddha's time, and that the times have changed. Our desires, our very understanding of the way things are have changed to the point that his teachings at that point are no longer able to take us to the other shore of enlightenment. But Shakyamuni Buddha made a very important message in the Pure Land Sutras, and basically said that after all of the other teachings, all the other sutras, all the other methods, everything else that he had taught, when all of that has faded away and all of that is completely non-existent, the one teaching that will remain to the end of time is the Pure Land method of simple faith in Amitabha Buddha, his vows, making vows yourself and chanting his holy name and thereby salvation is given to each and every one of us. And birth into the Pure Land where we can become Buddhas and then go and help sentient beings ourselves. The genuine heart that Honin Shonin talks about when we talk about the threefold devotional heart. The first heart is the genuine heart. It is the heart that recognizes what I have just said. It is the heart that recognizes that from time immemorial, or the time of the Buddha, there were all of these wonderful, beautiful teachings that people could attain salvation, liberation, nirvana, enlightenment. But that time has changed. And because of our evil karma, we are now in the period of the latter day of the law. And those teachings, we cannot achieve enlightenment by. You have the schools of self-power and other power. All of the previous teachings were self-power. It's something that I do. It's something that I focus on. I have to keep the precepts. I must do this. I must be a vegetarian. I must not engage in all of these things. I must do this. I must recite the sutras and this, that, and the other. And how exceedingly difficult is that, especially in this day and age? How many times a day do you lose your temper and become angry? Well, if we followed by the old system of things, you, myself, all of us would be doomed. Because we cannot keep those precepts. We cannot not become angry and say harsh words and think harsh and evil thoughts to our fellow people. So we would all be lost. And it is for that reason that eons and eons of millennia, of kalpas, of inconceivable centuries of trillions of years ago, Dharmakara Bodhisattva, who became Amitabha Buddha, Amida Buddha, Amitofo, made these 48 vows because he knew that we would be unable to do even the simplest good in this day and age. So he gave us the easy practice. Easy does not mean lazy, as some people have equated the Pure Land schools with. Easy equals all. It is the easy practice that all may follow. A 3-year-old child can recite the Buddha name. An ancient ancestor, our great-grandparents, on their deathbed, they can recite the Buddha name. It is that simple. With faith and vows, believing in the grace of Amida Buddha, we will attain birth in the Pure Land, guaranteed, assured. Salvation assured. And it sounds very simple, and on one hand it is, on the other hand it is extremely complicated. Oftentimes Pure Land Buddhism gets equated with Christianity, and while there are similarities between the Christian way of thinking and the Buddhist way of thinking, they are very different. So the genuine heart is the heart that recognizes all of these things that we've talked about. The genuine heart is the heart that looks at itself in the mirror and says, I am, and is honest with itself. When you look in the mirror and you see yourself and you see your life conditions, your karma, do you think you're somebody more special than you are? Or are you honest? I have failed this way, and this way, and this way. I have been disobedient and disrespectful to my mother, to my parents. I have held malice towards my spouse. My friends, I have thought bad thoughts about. My co-workers, when they get a promotion, do I feel jealous? And do I feel like I should have been given this? Do I feel that I deserve so and so, me, I, me. And if you're honest with yourself, and we are honest with ourselves, we will realize that we have failed over and over and over again. It's all about me, what I want, what I think, what I feel. Do I hear this phrase or this teaching or this word that makes me mad? Do my parents say these things that I don't agree with and I become hostile? Every single one of us, my friends and brothers and sisters in the Dharma, every single one of us have failed. And this is why the genuine heart is so important in this threefold devotional heart. Because we recognize and we realize that we cannot do this on our own, no matter how hard we try. I am not the Buddha. You are not the Buddha. So to recognize the Pure Land Gate as the only way out for us, to have reliance on Amida's vows, to have vows ourselves, and to practice the recitation of the Nembutsu, the Nyempho, the Buddha, the holiest name of all, to recite the name of Amitabha Buddha. Essentially, this genuine heart is nothing more than the reality of I cannot do this on my own. You cannot do it on your own. We need to encourage one another and keep our ultimate goal on Amitabha Buddha and his vow, and listen to his words calling us. Listen to him calling our name as we chant his name, so that we can attain birth in the Pure Land. This is the genuine heart. The genuine heart is the heart that says, I have looked, I have searched, and I can only find refuge and solace in the Buddha. And I dedicate myself wholeheartedly to birth in the Pure Land through the grace of Amida Buddha. And he made his name so easy. He made the practice of Nembutsu so easy that everyone, whether young or old, can practice it. Whether sitting, lying down, walking, driving to work, using the lavatory, and falling asleep. Namu Amida Buddha, Namu Amida Buddha, Namu Amida Buddha, Namu Amida Buddha. In this way, the practice is simple and genuine, and it reflects the genuine heart. The genuine heart also tells us it is the heart of understanding that there are so many practices that Buddha Shakyamuni gave to us. But what is the genuine practice that falls in line with this genuine heart? The genuine practice is indeed the sole reason that the historical Buddha attained enlightenment in this life. And it was to teach us of Amida Buddha, Amidhofo. Of all of the 84,000 different paths to the Dharma, the most important path that the Buddha gave us was simply the recitation of Amida Buddha's name. It is the rightly established practice, and it reflects the original vow, the 18th vow of the 48 vows that Amida made when he was Dharmakara Bodhisattva. That if all beings in the 10 directions of the universe, if they hear my name and recite my name, seeking birth into my pure land, if I do not attain enlightenment, then may I never become the Buddha. Well, he has become the Buddha. And he is Amida Buddha, Amitofo. So we know this to be true because he is the Buddha. And if that is true, then his vows are true. So every sentient being, whether you consider yourself a Buddhist, a Christian, a Muslim, a Hindu, Baha'i, Wiccan, whatever, if you hear the teachings of the Buddha and you recite the Nembutsu, the Nyemfo, you have the genuine heart. The heart of the vow, the heart of Amida Buddha, the heart of Amitofo. Very simple, right? Very simple, yet exceedingly profound and difficult to truly comprehend. It takes a lot of meditation and a lot of rereading to really understand what it was the Buddha did for you and I. Christianity talks about their Savior dying on a cross once and for all of mankind. And it was a horrible death. It was a very painful death. It was a death that no human being should ever experience. But even one moment of that excruciating pain is nothing compared to the pain that Dharmakara Bodhisattva, for trillions and trillions of multiple thousands of eons, suffered on behalf of you and I, to perfect his vows and create his pure land for you and I. So, in conclusion of this first part of the threefold devotional heart, the genuine heart is something that we should find, something we should meditate upon, and something that we should hold here in our hearts. And when we stand before the Butsudan, when we kneel before the Buddha and we chant the Buddha name, this is something we should keep in mind. The ultimate act of love, the ultimate act of compassion that Amida Buddha, Amitofo, gave and did for you and I. This, essentially, explaining in this day and age, this is essentially what the genuine heart that you and I should have is. To realize all of the things that we've talked about in this video. And to redouble our efforts. And when we recite the Buddha's name, do we do it because it's habit? Do we do it because we take for granted the fact that we're Buddhists? Do we do it because it's a prayer we're supposed to do and Namu Amidava, Namu Amidava, Namu Amidava, Namu Amidava, come and go to work? Or is it something that we truly feel and recognize within our hearts? Something that the Buddha from time immemorial, something that we can't even comprehend, the Buddha did for us, knowing that we would be in this state of life. Whatever the state of life for you is. Whether you are happy with your job, your career, your family, your friends. If you're destitute, needing of money, wanting of food and clothing. Realizing that this samsara world truly is a world of suffering. And the Buddha gave us the way to break out of this. So we don't have to return to this Saha world. This, my brothers and sisters, my disciples, my friends, Dharma masters, this is the main teaching of the Buddha. Eternal and ultimate salvation for all sentient beings. All. Not just a select few, all sentient beings. And the practice is very simple. Reciting the holy name with faith, vows, and devotion. Namu Amidabu, Namu Amidabu, Namu Amidabu, Namu Amidabu, Namu Amidabu. Amitofo, 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 and so on. I hope this Dharma talk finds you well, and welcome to the series of the Threefold Devotional Heart. This has been a brief Dharma talk on the genuine heart. As always, I am Shi Daxing, the chief lay priest of the Nianfo Nembutsu Society of Northeast Florida in Callahan, Florida. We welcome you to joining us for services and welcome you to contact us at the link below. And we wish you all of the best in your practice. May the Buddha bless you and your family this day and always. Namo Amitofo, Namu Amidabus.